The grandfather clock's pendulum swung with a hypnotic rhythm, each tick echoing through the cavernous penthouse like a heartbeat. Moonlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting elongated shadows across Italian marble floors. Adrian Hale stood motionless at the glass wall, overlooking the city's glittering expanse, a kingdom of light beneath him, yet so distant. His reflection stared back, unchanged for centuries, angular features, eyes the color of aged whiskey, skin pale as alabaster. The city lights below pulsed like a living organism, reminding him of blood flowing through veins. Adrian pressed his palm against the cool glass, feeling the subtle vibration of the world beyond, a world that continued to evolve while he remained static. The air in the penthouse hung heavy with the scent of leather-bound books and sandalwood, undercut by the metallic tang that had begun to permeate his senses these past months. Adrian's tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, testing the sharpness of his canines. Duller now, a concerning development. He moved away from the window, each step deliberate across the marble floor. His fingertips trailed along the spines of ancient texts as he passed his library collection. The leather bindings felt rough against his increasingly sensitive skin, another symptom of his weakening condition. "Sir?" Nora Pierce's voice came from the doorway, soft yet startling in the silence. The elderly housekeeper stood with perfect posture, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. "Your evening meal is prepared." Adrian nodded, not turning to face her. "Thank you, Nora. I'll be along shortly." The crystal decanter clinked against the glass as he poured himself a measure of crimson liquid. The aroma that rose from it was complex, iron-rich, with undertones of something medicinal, not the vibrant, intoxicating scent it once held. He swirled it, watching how it clung to the sides of the glass with increasing viscosity. Another bad sign. "The council has called again," Nora added, lingering at the threshold. "Ms. Crest was quite insistent." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Eleanor can wait. She's had centuries of practice." She mentioned something about the Quinn child. His hand froze mid-motion. The name Quinn sent a ripple of sensation through his body, a rare feeling in his numbed existence. Memories surfaced. Vivian's smile, her warmth, her betrayal, and now, her child. "What about the child?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Only that the situation has become complicated. The hospital called as well. Dr. Ward says the treatments are failing." Adrian closed his eyes, allowing the weight of those words to settle. Mara Quinn, 8 years old, terminal diagnosis, and carrying in her blood the ancestral mutation that had once drawn him to her mother. "Have Samuel bring the car around," he said finally, "and contact Dr. Ward. Tell her I'm coming." The rain began as Adrian's sleek black car pulled away from his building, drops striking the roof like fingertips tapping for attention. Lucas, his driver, navigated the slick streets with practiced ease, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at his employer. "Straight to St. Catherine's, sir?" Lucas asked. "Yes," Adrian replied, watching the city blur through rain-streaked windows. The streets seemed to pulse with life. Couples huddled under umbrellas, vendors closing shop, the everyday drama of mortal existence. Adrian's phone vibrated. Eleanor Crest. He silenced it, slipping it back into his pocket. The council could wait. Their concerns, the politics of immortals, the careful balance of power, seemed increasingly trivial against the ticking clock of a child's life. St. Catherine's Children's Hospital loomed ahead, its windows glowing like lanterns in the darkening storm. Adrian felt a tightness in his chest, not the hunger that had once defined his existence, but something more human. Anxiety, concern, emotions he'd thought long buried. The hospital's antiseptic smell assaulted his senses as he stepped through the automatic doors. Beneath it lurked the complex bouquet of human suffering. Fear, hope, grief, and determination all mingling in the recycled air. Adrian's heightened senses detected each layer, making his temples throb. Dr. Helena Ward met him at the elevator, her dark skin contrasting with her white coat. Exhaustion lined her face, but her eyes remained sharp, assessing. "You came," she said, not bothering with formalities. "I wasn't sure you would. You said it was urgent." Adrian matched her pace as they walked down the corridor. "How is she?" "Failing. The experimental treatments aren't working. Her genetic anomaly is both keeping her alive and killing her. We've never seen anything quite like it." They stopped outside a room with a small window. Through it, Adrian could see a tiny figure in the bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed with artificial life. Mara Quinn's skin was nearly translucent, blue veins visible beneath. Her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. "And her mother?" Adrian asked, his voice barely audible. Dr. Ward's expression hardened. "Vivian overdosed 3 days ago. She's been declared brain dead. There's no one else. Mara will become a ward of the state when—" She paused. "If she survives." Adrian's fingers pressed against the glass, leaving faint impressions that quickly faded. "The blood work?" "Confirms what you suspected. The mutation is active, more pronounced than her mother's. In another context, it might be fascinating." Dr. Ward's voice dropped lower. "The social worker is processing her case now. Once Vivian is taken off life support tomorrow, Mara will be alone." A nurse emerged from the room, nodding respectfully to Dr. Ward before continuing down the hall. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows with renewed fury. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a celestial warning. "I need to see her," Adrian said. Dr. Ward hesitated. "She's very weak, and you're not family. Helena." His use of her first name made her blink. "You know what I am. You know why I'm here." Their eyes locked in silent communication. Dr. Ward had been one of the few humans who knew his true nature, a confidence born of necessity years ago when he needed medical expertise. 5 minutes, she conceded. "But Adrian, she's just a child. Whatever you're thinking, I'm not here to harm her." The words came out sharper than intended. Inside the room, the beeping machines created a rhythmic counterpoint to the storm. Mara's breathing was shallow, each inhale a visible effort that made her thin chest rise and fall unevenly. Up close, the resemblance to Vivian was striking. The same delicate nose, the same curve of the brow. Adrian approached slowly, careful not to disturb the equipment. The child's scent was complex, illness intertwined with something else, something familiar yet altered. The mutation in her blood called to him, a siren song that both attracted and repelled. He stood beside the bed, watching. This fragile human child, connected to Vivian by blood, connected to him by something far more ancient, the last of a genetic line that traced back to his own mortal days. Mara's eyes fluttered open. They were startling, violet blue, unusual even without the flecks of gold that seemed to catch the light. Recognition flickered across her face, though they had never met. "You're him," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the machines. "The man from Mom's pictures." Adrian remained perfectly still. "Yes. She said you might come someday." Mara's small hand moved across the blanket, trembling with effort. "She said you were different." Outside, lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the room in harsh white light. Adrian felt the weight of decision pressing down on him, centuries of caution, against an impulse he barely understood. "Are you here to take me away?" Mara asked, a child's directness cutting through pretense. The question hung in the air between them. Adrian's mind raced through implications, consequences, impossibilities. The council would object. Eleanor would see it as a provocation. His weakening condition made it dangerous. And yet, would you want that? He asked carefully. Mara's eyes, too old for her young face, studied him. "Mom said you could help me, that your blood was special." She paused, swallowing with difficulty. "I don't want to die yet." Another crash of thunder, closer now. The lights flickered momentarily. In that brief darkness, Adrian made his decision. The first truly spontaneous choice in decades. "Dr. Ward!" he called, not taking his eyes off Mara. "We need to discuss adoption papers." Helena appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of shock and concern. "Adrian, you can't be serious. The legal implications alone." "I have lawyers for that. Samuel is already on his way." Adrian finally turned to face her. "You know her condition. You know what's in her blood. And you know what's in mine." "It's not that simple," Helena protested. "There are protocols, evaluations. You can't just, 'I can and I will.'" His voice carried the weight of centuries of command. "Make the arrangements. Tonight." The storm reached its peak as Samuel Drake arrived with documents in hand. Rain pounded against the windows like desperate fists as signatures were exchanged, as legal guardianship transferred, as Mara Quinn became, on paper, the ward of Adrian Hale. "The council will fight this," Samuel warned in a hushed tone as they completed the paperwork. "Eleanor especially." "Let them," Adrian replied, watching as nurses prepared Mara for transport. They worked efficiently, disconnecting monitors and replacing them with portable equivalents. The child's eyes remained fixed on Adrian throughout, a mixture of fear and hope evident in her gaze. Dr. Ward supervised the process, her professional demeanor masking her personal concerns. "She'll need constant medical supervision. Her condition is extremely fragile." "I've made arrangements," Adrian assured her. "The penthouse has been prepared." The journey from hospital to car was a careful choreography of medical equipment and protective coverings. The storm raged around them, wind driving the rain sideways as they moved Mara into the waiting vehicle. Adrian held an umbrella over her stretcher, feeling each raindrop that managed to strike his exposed skin like tiny needles. Inside the car, Mara lay across the back seat, bundled in blankets. Adrian sat beside her, one hand resting near hers but not touching. Lucas drove with exaggerated care through the storm-lashed streets, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the deluge. "Is your house big?" Mara asked suddenly, her voice small against the drumming rain. "Yes," Adrian answered. "Very big." "Does it have ghosts?" The question caught him off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Old houses should have ghosts," she said matter-of-factly. "Mom said your family was very old." Adrian felt something stir within him, an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. "No ghosts," he said finally. "Just memories." The car pulled into the private underground garage of his building. Nora waited by the elevator, her usual composure slightly shaken by the unusual circumstances. Her eyes widened at the sight of the child being carefully lifted from the car. "The blue room is ready," she said to Adrian, "as you requested." The ascent to the penthouse was silent except for Mara's labored breathing. Adrian watched the floor numbers increase, feeling the weight of his decision growing with each passing second. What had he done? What compulsion had driven him to this point? The penthouse doors opened to reveal the transformed space. Medical equipment now stood alongside antique furniture. Modern monitors contrasted with centuries-old art. A hospital bed had been placed near the windows, offering a view of the storm-tossed city below. As Lucas and Samuel helped settle Mara into her new surroundings, Adrian stepped away, moving to the windows. The storm showed no signs of abating, lightning still forking across the sky in brilliant flashes. It mirrored the turmoil he felt, a disruption to centuries of careful routine. His phone vibrated again. Eleanor. This time he answered. "You've crossed a line, Adrian." Her voice came through, cold and precise. "The council is convening an emergency session. The Quinn child should never have—" "She has a name," Adrian interrupted. "Mara, and she's under my protection now." "Protection?" Eleanor's laugh was brittle. "Is that what you're calling it? We both know why you want her. The mutation in her blood is dying with her unless I intervene." "Precisely my point. You're too weak to attempt a transition, especially with a child. It's reckless, even for you." Adrian watched as Nora gently arranged pillows around Mara, the elderly housekeeper's movements betraying unexpected tenderness. "This isn't about transition," he said quietly. "This is about redemption." "Redemption?" Eleanor's voice dripped with disdain. "After all these centuries, you've developed a conscience. How inconvenient for us all." Adrian ended the call without responding. Across the room, Mara's eyes found his. Despite her weakness, despite the machines and tubes, there was something undeniably alive in her gaze, a spark that called to something long dormant within him. He approached her bedside, aware of Nora and Samuel withdrawing discreetly to give them privacy. "Are you going to make me better?" Mara asked, her small hand reaching toward his. Adrian hesitated before allowing his fingers to touch hers. The contact sent a jolt through him, her skin burning with fever, his cold from centuries of undeath. Two extremes meeting in the middle. "I'm going to try," he answered truthfully. "How?" Her directness was disarming. Adrian sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Outside, lightning illuminated the room, casting their shadows against the far wall, one small, one large, both somehow incomplete. "My blood is different," he began, searching for words a child might understand. "It might help yours become stronger." "Because you're a vampire," Mara said simply. Adrian went still. "What makes you say that?" "Mom told me. She said you lived forever and drank blood. She had a picture of you from when she was young, and you look the same now." Mara's eyes held no fear, only curiosity. "Is that why your hand is so cold?" The thunder that followed seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Adrian found himself at a crossroads he hadn't anticipated, faced with a child's innocent acceptance of a truth adults spent lifetimes denying. "Yes," he admitted. "That's why." Mara nodded, as if confirming something she already knew. "Will I become like you?" "No," Adrian said firmly. "That's not my intention. My blood might heal you, but you'll remain human. You'll grow up, live a normal life." "But you'll stay the same," Mara observed. Her eyelids were growing heavy, exhaustion claiming her. "Won't you be lonely when I'm gone?" The question struck Adrian with unexpected force. Loneliness, the constant companion he'd learned to ignore over centuries of existence. The emptiness he'd filled with power, with knowledge, with careful distance. "I've been lonely for a very long time," he admitted, the words emerging before he could stop them. Mara's eyes drifted closed, her breathing settling into the rhythm of sleep. Adrian remained beside her, watching the rise and fall of her chest, listening to the storm gradually subside outside. Samuel appeared at his shoulder. "The council has called an emergency session for tomorrow night. Eleanor is gathering support against you." Let her try, Adrian murmured. Sir, with respect, your condition has been deteriorating for months. This child's blood might temporarily strengthen you, but the risk of attempting to heal her in your weakened state is mine to take, Adrian finished. He stood, careful not to disturb Mara's sleep. Have Dr. Ward prepare the transfusion equipment. We begin tomorrow. Samuel hesitated. And if it fails? If your blood rejects hers, or worse? Adrian turned to look at the sleeping child, this fragile human who had somehow breached centuries of careful isolation in a single night. In her face, he saw echoes of his own long-forgotten humanity, possibilities he'd abandoned, choices unmade. Then we die together, he said softly. But first, we'll see if my blood remembers what it means to heal. The word hung in the air between them, charged with a meaning that transcended the clinical definition. Adrian hadn't used his blood to heal in over a century, not since the last time had nearly destroyed him. Samuel's expression tightened with concern. Sir, I've served you for 37 years. In that time, I've never questioned your judgment. But this is not open for discussion. Adrian's voice remained quiet, but carried the weight of centuries of command. He turned from Mara's bedside, moving toward the tall windows where rain still streaked the glass in rivulets. Make the arrangements, Samuel, and prepare my statement for the council. Lightning flashed, illuminating the grounds of the estate for a brief, stark moment. The ancient oaks bending in the wind, the security detail positioned discreetly at the perimeter. In that flash, Adrian caught sight of his own reflection. The hollows beneath his cheekbones more pronounced, the pallor beneath his skin more evident. Samuel bowed slightly. As you wish. Dr. Ward will require several hours to calibrate the equipment for your unique physiology. Tell her to prioritize compatibility testing. Mara's mutation may complicate things. Adrian pressed his fingertips against the cool glass. And Samuel, have Nora prepare the East Wing suite. If Vivian arrives, she'll want to be near her daughter. You believe she'll come? Adrian's lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. A mother's instinct is a powerful thing, especially when Eleanor makes sure she learns what we're attempting. After Samuel departed, Adrian returned to Mara's bedside. The child slept peacefully now, her small hand curled against the pillow. He reached out, hesitating just above her skin, feeling the heat radiating from her, so much warmer than his own perpetually cool flesh. You asked if I'll be lonely, he whispered. The truth is, little one, I've forgotten how to be anything else. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through specially treated windows, another innovation that had made Adrian's existence more tolerable over the centuries. He stood in his private laboratory as Dr. Helena Ward prepared the transfusion equipment, her movements precise and methodical. The preliminary compatibility tests are promising, she said, not looking up from the microscope. Her mutation creates an unusual receptor configuration, almost as if it evolved specifically to interact with vampire physiology. Adrian watched as she adjusted the eyepiece. That's not coincidental. Helena glanced up, her gray eyes sharp with intelligence. You knew about this genetic anomaly before she arrived? I suspected. Adrian moved to the ancient oak cabinet that dominated one wall of the laboratory. He unlocked it with a small brass key he kept on a chain around his neck. The Quinn bloodline has interested me for generations. That explains the extensive genetic profiles in your database. Helena straightened, pushing a strand of silver-streaked hair behind her ear. But it doesn't explain why you've waited until now, when you're at your weakest and she's at death's door. Adrian removed a leather-bound journal from the cabinet, its pages yellowed with age. Because until now, the mutation was dormant. Something triggered its expression in Mara. Something I need to understand. He laid the journal on the examination table, opening it to reveal handwritten notes and detailed anatomical drawings dating back to the 1870s. Helena leaned forward, her breath catching as she recognized the significance of what she was seeing. "These are your observations of the Quinn ancestors," she murmured. "You've been monitoring them for 143 years. Adrian turned a page, revealing a family tree with certain names circled in red ink. "Since I discovered that their blood contained trace elements of an ancient vampire lineage thought to be extinct." Helena's fingers hovered over the page. "The Calyx bloodline. But that's a myth to most of our kind, yes." Adrian closed the journal. "A lineage rumored to possess regenerative capabilities beyond even our natural healing." The laboratory door opened, and Nora Pierce entered carrying a tray with a crystal decanter. "Your morning supplement, sir?" she said, her voice carrying the soft lilt of her Irish homeland, despite decades in America. "Dr. Ward insisted I bring it immediately." Adrian nodded his thanks as Nora poured the dark crimson liquid into a glass. The synthetic blood substitute had sustained him for years, though it did nothing to halt his deterioration. He drank it quickly, suppressing a grimace at its flat, metallic taste. "Mara is awake," Nora continued, collecting the empty glass. "She's asking for you. And Lucas reports that Ms. Cole's flight landed 30 minutes ago. He's bringing her directly here." Adrian exchanged a glance with Helena. Sooner than expected. Eleanor works quickly. "Should I delay the procedure?" Helena asked. "No, prepare Mara. I'll speak with Vivian when she arrives." Adrian moved toward the door, then paused. "And Helena? The council meeting is tonight. Regardless of what happens there, we proceed." Mara sat propped against pillows in the massive four-poster bed, a chessboard balanced on her lap. Sunlight caught in her dark curls, creating a halo effect that made something twist painfully in Adrian's chest. "I found this in the drawer," she said, holding up a carved obsidian knight. "It's beautiful. Do you play?" Adrian settled into the chair beside her bed. "I do. That set is quite old. A gift from Benjamin Franklin, actually." Mara's eyes widened. "The Benjamin Franklin? With the kite and the key?" "The very same. He was a fascinating man. Terrible chess player, though." Adrian picked up a white pawn, rolling it between his fingers. "He gave me this set after I beat him 3 times in one evening." "How old are you, really?" Mara asked, her head tilting with curiosity. Adrian placed the pawn on the board. "Old enough to have watched empires rise and fall. Old enough that sometimes the centuries blur together." "That sounds lonely," she said simply. Adrian studied her face, the wisdom in her eyes that seemed so at odds with her youth. "It can be, but there are compensations. I've seen remarkable things. The first electric lights illuminating Paris. The Wright brothers taking flight. Medical advances that would have seemed like magic in my youth." "Is that why you want to help me? Because you've seen so many medical advances?" "No." Adrian moved a chess piece, opening the game. "I want to help you because some lives shine more brightly than others. Yours is one of them." Mara considered the board, then made her move. "My mom says I'm special because I never give up. But that's not true. Sometimes I want to give up. It just hurts too much." "Courage isn't about never wanting to surrender," Adrian said quietly. "It's about feeling that fear and continuing anyway." They played in companionable silence for several minutes. The only sounds the soft click of chess pieces and Mara's steady breathing. Adrian found himself slowing his movements, matching his pace to hers, aware of how fragile this moment was, this connection across centuries and species. "Check," Mara announced triumphantly. Adrian examined the board with genuine surprise. Her strategy was unorthodox but effective. He was contemplating his next move when the atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. A scent, familiar and bittersweet, reached him moments before the sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway. "Mom's here," Mara said, looking up. The door burst open, and Vivian Cole stood framed in the doorway, her face flushed with emotion. She wore travel-rumpled clothes, her honey-blonde hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Her eyes, the same striking blue as her daughter's, fixed on Adrian with a mixture of fury and desperation. "Get away from my daughter," she said, her voice low and dangerous. Adrian rose slowly, careful to make no sudden movements. "Vivian, you made good time." "Mom," Mara's face lit up. "Adrian's been teaching me chess. Did you know this set belonged to Benjamin Franklin?" Vivian crossed the room in quick strides, placing herself between Adrian and the bed. "Pack your things, sweetheart. We're leaving." "But," Mara began. "Now, Mara." Vivian's tone brooked no argument, though her hands trembled as she reached for her daughter's backpack. Adrian remained perfectly still. "She can't leave, Vivian. Not in her condition. You know that." "What I know," Vivian said, turning to face him fully, "is that Eleanor Crest called me personally to warn me you were planning some kind of experimental procedure on our daughter without my consent." "Of course she did," Adrian murmured. "And did she mention that Mara's cancer has progressed beyond conventional treatment? That the mutation in her blood, the same mutation that runs in your family, might be her only chance?" Uncertainty flickered across Vivian's face. "What mutation? What are you talking about?" "The calyx gene." Adrian held her gaze steadily. "The reason I sought you out 12 years ago. The reason Eleanor has been watching your family for generations." The color drained from Vivian's face. You knew? When we met, when we were together, it was because of some gene." "Mom?" Mara's voice was small. "What's happening?" Adrian took a careful step forward. "I sought you out because of the gene, yes. I stayed because I fell in love with you. Those two truths can coexist, Vivian." Vivian's laugh was brittle. "Love? You disappeared without a word 5 years ago. No explanation, no contact, nothing. To protect you both." Adrian's voice remained steady despite the ache spreading through his chest, a physical manifestation of old guilt. "Eleanor was moving against me, using my attachment to humans as evidence of my unfitness to lead. I left to draw her attention away from you." "Convenient explanation," Vivian said, but doubt had crept into her voice. "Mom, I want to stay," Mara said firmly. I think he can help me." Vivian turned to her daughter, brushing dark curls from her forehead with gentle fingers. "Baby, you don't understand what he is." "I do, though." Mara's gaze was direct, unflinching. "He's a vampire, and he thinks his blood might help me because of some special gene we have." Adrian and Vivian both stared at her in surprise. Mara shrugged. "I'm 11, not stupid. He doesn't eat food, his skin is cold, the windows have special glass, and he talks about Benjamin Franklin like they were friends." She looked at Adrian. "Plus, I found some old books in the nightstand about vampire physiology." Despite everything, a smile tugged at Adrian's lips. "I've underestimated you, it seems." "Everyone always does." Mara reached for her mother's hand. "Mom, please. I want to try. Nothing else has worked. Vivian closed her eyes briefly, her shoulders sagging. When she opened them again, she looked directly at Adrian. If this is some game between you and Eleanor— It's not a game, Adrian said softly. It's about saving Mara, and possibly understanding why my own blood is failing after 8 centuries. A knock at the door interrupted them. Samuel stood in the doorway, his expression grave. Sir, Dr. Ward is ready, and the council representatives have arrived early, Eleanor among them. Adrian felt a cold certainty settle in his bones. She means to force my hand. Very well. He turned to Vivian. The choice is yours. But know this. Eleanor didn't contact you out of concern. She wants the secret of the calyx gene for herself. Vivian looked from Adrian to her daughter and back again. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history and the weight of an impossible decision. Finally, she spoke. If this hurts her in any way, you'll destroy me yourself, Adrian finished. I would expect nothing less. The transfusion chamber was a blend of ancient tradition and cutting-edge technology. Centuries-old silver sconces illuminated walls lined with modern medical equipment. In the center stood 2 recliners, positioned side by side beneath a domed ceiling, painted with constellations that had guided Adrian in his human life. Mara lay in one chair, small and pale in a hospital gown too large for her frame. Adrian occupied the other, his sleeves rolled up to expose forearms marked with the faint traces of centuries-old scars, remnants from his mortal life. Dr. Ward moved between them, attaching monitors and checking vital signs. Vivian stood at Mara's side, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the chair. The procedure is straightforward in theory, Helena explained, her clinical tone a counterpoint to the tension in the room. We'll create a direct exchange circuit between Adrian's circulatory system and Mara's. His blood contains regenerative properties that may recognize and respond to the calyx mutation in Mara's cells. And the risks? Vivian asked. Helena hesitated, glancing at Adrian. He nodded slightly, giving permission for complete honesty. Rejection is possible. Mara's system could react violently to vampire blood, and Adrian's weakened condition makes this dangerous for him as well. The energy required for the regenerative process could accelerate his deterioration. Samuel, standing near the door, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, the council members are growing impatient. Eleanor is suggesting your absence indicates incapacity. Let her suggest what she will, Adrian replied. This takes precedence. Helena finished connecting the final tubes and stepped back to check the monitoring equipment. We're ready to begin. Once started, we cannot safely interrupt the process until completion. Adrian turned his head to look at Mara. Are you afraid? The girl considered this seriously. A little, but not of you. Good. Adrian extended his hand across the space between their chairs. After a moment's hesitation, Mara took it. Her small fingers were warm against his cool palm. Think of something that brings you joy while the transfusion happens. It helps the blood remember its purpose. Vivian made a small, choked sound, but didn't interfere. Helena pressed a series of buttons on the control panel. Beginning transfusion now. The first draw of blood from Adrian's veins brought an immediate, searing pain, far more intense than he had anticipated. His body, already struggling to maintain its ancient equilibrium, rebelled against the loss. He kept his expression neutral, unwilling to alarm Mara or give Vivian reason to halt the procedure. As his blood began flowing into Mara's system, Adrian felt a strange sensation, like tendrils of awareness extending beyond his physical form. He could sense her body's response. The initial shock as his blood met hers, followed by a curious recognition, as if two long-separated substances were remembering their common origin. Mara gasped, her back arching slightly. "What's happening?" Vivian demanded, moving forward. Helena checked the monitors. Her heart rate is elevated but stable. This reaction is expected. Adrian felt it too, the moment when Mara's blood began returning to his system. It carried with it something he hadn't experienced in centuries. The vibrant, electric sensation of truly living cells. The calyx mutation in her blood recognized something in his, awakening dormant pathways. Images flashed through his mind, memories not his own. A woman in 19th century dress, her face bearing a striking resemblance to Mara's. A man in a laboratory, examining blood samples under primitive equipment. Eleanor, younger but unmistakable, watching from shadows. "I can see them," Mara whispered, her eyes wide but unfocused. "Your memories. So many lives." Adrian tightened his grip on her hand. "Focus on something happy, Mara. Don't get lost in the past." But the connection was strengthening, becoming a two-way conduit of memory and sensation. Adrian found himself experiencing flashes of Mara's childhood, birthday parties with Vivian, hospital rooms, the particular loneliness of a child who knows she is different. The monitors began to signal changes. Mara's vital signs strengthened while Adrian's weakened. The exchange was working, but at a cost he hadn't fully anticipated. "Sir," Helena said urgently, "your cellular integrity is compromising. We need to slow the process." "No," Adrian said through gritted teeth. "Maintain the current rate." Vivian looked between them, understanding dawning on her face. "It's killing you, isn't it? Helping her is killing you." Before Adrian could respond, the chamber door burst open. Eleanor Crest stood in the doorway, flanked by two council security officers. Her tailored charcoal suit and immaculate silver hair projected authority, but it was the cold calculation in her eyes that made her truly formidable. "This is what has become of the mighty Adrian Hale," she announced, her voice carrying the precise diction of old European aristocracy. "Bleeding himself dry for a human child while neglecting his duties to our kind." Samuel moved to intercept her. "This is a private medical procedure, counselor. You have no authority here." "I have every authority," Eleanor replied smoothly. "The council has called an emergency vote on Adrian's fitness to lead. Your absence, Adrian, was taken as confirmation of your incapacity." Adrian felt a wave of weakness wash over him, but kept his voice steady. "And yet here you are, Eleanor, rather than presiding over this supposed vote. Your concern is touching." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Mara, then to the transfusion equipment. Something like hunger flashed in her eyes. "So it's true. You found a viable calyx carrier." "Step back, Eleanor," Adrian warned, even as another wave of dizziness threatened his consciousness. She moved further into the room instead, her attention now fixed on Vivian. "Ms. Cole, has Adrian explained what he's really doing? How he's using your daughter to save himself?" "That's not—" Adrian began, but a sudden spike of pain cut off his words. The monitors attached to Mara began showing unexpected readings. Her brainwave patterns shifted dramatically, becoming more complex, more mature. Her eyes flew open, but the blue had darkened to an almost violet hue. "You've been lying for centuries," Mara said, but the voice wasn't entirely her own. It carried echoes of other voices, older ones. "You betrayed them all." Eleanor went completely still. "What is this?" Mara turned to look directly at Eleanor, her expression unnaturally adult. "You killed them, the last true calyx bloodline. You hunted them down in 1879 and drained them dry, trying to steal their power. Mara, Vivian whispered, reaching for her daughter. Not just Mara, Adrian said weakly, understanding what was happening. The blood remembers, Eleanor. The calyx blood carries the memories of its ancestors, memories of what you did. Eleanor's composure cracked. Stop this immediately, she commanded Helena. The procedure cannot be safely interrupted, Helena replied, though her eyes darted nervously between the monitors. Mara continued, her voice gaining strength. You failed because you didn't understand how the calyx power works. It can't be taken, only given freely. That's why you've been watching my family for generations, waiting for the gene to become active again. Adrian felt his consciousness beginning to fade as more of his blood flowed into Mara. The room dimmed around the edges, but he fought to remain present. Through their connected blood, he could sense the transformation happening within Mara. Cells regenerating, cancer retreating before the combined power of his ancient blood and her awakened mutation. Adrian knew, Mara said, her gaze shifting to him. He figured it out decades ago. The calyx power isn't about taking life. It's about giving it. That's why he's dying now. He's giving his life force to me. Vivian made a strangled sound. Adrian, stop this. You're killing yourself. It's too late, Eleanor said, a strange satisfaction in her voice despite being exposed. Look at him. He's already too far gone. Adrian could barely keep his eyes open now. The centuries of his existence seemed to press down on him, demanding final payment. He felt Mara's hand in his, warmer now, stronger, and managed to squeeze it once before darkness began to claim him. Through the encroaching blackness, he heard the chamber door slam open again. Raised voices, commotion. The council security team, Samuel's voice, urgent and close. They've breached the perimeter. Eleanor's laugh, cold and triumphant. Did you think I would come alone? The estate is surrounded, Adrian. Your reign ends tonight, and the girl comes with me. Adrian struggled to respond, to protect Mara, but his body refused to obey. The last of his strength was flowing into her through the transfusion circuit. Then, impossibly, he felt a surge of energy flowing back. Not just Mara's blood returning through the medical equipment, but something more fundamental. Power, life force, freely given. His eyes snapped open to find Mara watching him intently, her hand gripping his with surprising strength. My turn to help you, she whispered. Before Adrian could respond, the chamber windows exploded inward in a shower of treated glass. Armed figures in tactical gear poured through the opening, weapons raised. Eleanor stepped back, a smile of victory curving her lips. Secure the child, she ordered. Kill the rest. The first shots rang out just as the transfusion equipment between Adrian and Mara began to glow with an impossible light, bathing the room in a pulsing, violet radiance that seemed to emanate from their connected blood itself. The violet light pulsed between them, a living bridge of energy that seemed to defy the laws of both human and vampire physiology. Adrian felt it surging through his veins, not just replenishing what he'd given to Mara, but amplifying it. His senses sharpened, the weakness evaporating as though it had never existed. The first bullets struck the medical equipment, shattering monitors and sending sparks flying. But instead of continuing their trajectory, the projectiles slowed and then stopped entirely, suspended in the thickening violet light that now formed a dome around Adrian and Mara. Eleanor's voice cut through the chaos. What is this? Stop them. Adrian rose from his chair, the IV line still connecting him to Mara, who remained seated but alert, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. The armed figures hesitated, their weapons trained on the strange phenomenon before them. "You've miscalculated, Eleanor," Adrian said, his voice stronger than it had been in decades. "The blood of the Hale line doesn't just carry our curse, it carries our protection." The suspended bullets dropped harmlessly to the floor. With a gesture that felt as natural as breathing, Adrian extended his hand. The violet energy responded, expanding outward in a controlled wave that pushed Eleanor's security team back against the walls without harming them. "Mara," he said softly, "can you stand?" The girl nodded, carefully removing the needle from her arm. Dr. Ward moved to help her, but stopped short when she saw the puncture wound close instantly, leaving unmarked skin behind. "The transfusion circuit," Helena whispered. "It's created some kind of feedback loop between your physiologies." Adrian helped Mara to her feet, noting with astonishment that her skin had lost its sickly pallor. The dark circles beneath her eyes had faded. She stood straighter, stronger than he'd ever seen her. "Her cells are stabilizing," Helena confirmed, checking a remaining monitor. "The mutation is adapting rather than destroying." Eleanor's composure cracked. "This changes nothing. The council has voted. Your time is over, Adrian, and the girl is too valuable to remain under your protection." "The council voted based on lies you fed them," Samuel interjected, stepping forward with his phone raised. "But I've been recording everything since I arrived. Your admission about manipulating test results, your armed assault on a medical procedure involving a child, all of it." Eleanor lunged toward Samuel, but Adrian was faster. He intercepted her with preternatural speed, his hand closing around her wrist with just enough pressure to stop her. "The old rules no longer apply," Adrian said quietly. "Not to me, not to Mara, and not to the council." He turned to the armed security team, many of whom he recognized as longtime members of the vampire community. "You've served the council faithfully, but ask yourselves, is this what you pledged to protect? Armed assault on a child? Medical sabotage? Political assassination?" Uncertainty flickered across their faces. One by one, they lowered their weapons. "This isn't over," Eleanor hissed. "The world is changing. Our kind needs strength, not your sentimental weakness." "Then let's put it to a real vote," Adrian replied. "Not in the shadows of the council chamber, but in the open. Let our community decide what kind of leadership they want." He turned to Samuel. "Call an emergency session, all council members, all regional representatives, and arrange for it to be streamed to every safe house and haven in our network." Samuel nodded, already typing on his phone. "You're making a mistake," Eleanor warned. "Our secrecy has protected us for centuries." "Our secrecy is becoming our prison," Adrian countered. "And it's time we acknowledged that the world has changed." The Great Hall of the Hale estate hadn't been used for a full gathering in over 50 years. Now, less than 24 hours after the confrontation in the medical chamber, it hummed with tension and expectation. Screens had been set up to accommodate remote participants, and Samuel had arranged for a secure broadcast to vampire communities across the continent. Adrian stood at the center of the room, Mara beside him. The girl had insisted on being present, and after what they'd shared through the transfusion circuit, he couldn't deny her. Vivian stood protectively on Mara's other side, her expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. "She looks better," Vivian whispered, studying her daughter's face. "How is this possible?" "We don't fully understand it yet," Adrian admitted. "Dr. Ward has been running tests all night, but something in Mara's genetic mutation resonated with my blood in a way we never anticipated." Eleanor and her supporters occupied one side of the hall, their expressions ranging from open hostility to nervous uncertainty. The rest of the council members and regional representatives filled the remaining space, many of them seeing each other in person for the first time in decades. Samuel stepped forward, his lawyer's composure firmly in place. This emergency session is now in session. As senior legal counsel to both the council and House Hale, I will moderate. He played the recording from the medical chamber, the sound of Eleanor's voice filling the hall as she admitted to manipulating test results and ordering the armed assault. Murmurs of shock and disapproval rippled through the assembly. "These are extraordinary accusations," one of the older council members said. "Eleanor, how do you respond?" Eleanor rose, her dignity intact despite her precarious position. "I acted to protect our community from Adrian's increasingly erratic behavior. His obsession with this human child has clouded his judgment and compromised our security." "The child has a name," Adrian said, his voice carrying throughout the hall without effort. "Mara Quinn, and she is not merely human." A hush fell over the assembly. "Dr. Ward, please share your findings," Adrian prompted. Helena stepped forward, clinical and precise. "Mara's genetic mutation has been mischaracterized. It's not a random anomaly, but a specific evolutionary adaptation. When exposed to vampire blood, specifically Adrian's, her cells don't deteriorate. They transform." She displayed a series of microscope images on the main screen. These show Mara's blood cells before and after the transfusion circuit. The mutation has been activated rather than suppressed, creating a hybrid cellular structure that appears to have properties of both species. "Impossible," someone muttered. "I've verified the results myself," Helena continued. "And there's more. Genetic sequencing reveals markers that match ancient vampire bloodlines, specifically the Hale lineage." The hall erupted in shocked conversations. Adrian felt Mara's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. "Are you saying this child is part vampire?" one of the council members asked. "I'm saying evolution doesn't follow our arbitrary categories," Helena replied. "Mara's ancestors likely included vampires who reproduced with humans generations ago. The genetic markers remained dormant until now." Eleanor seized on this revelation. "Then she's even more valuable than we thought. All the more reason she should be under council protection, not hidden away by a king who's lost his edge." Adrian stepped forward, and the hall quieted again. "For centuries, I've served as your king because our community needed leadership during dangerous times. I've upheld our traditions, maintained our secrecy, and protected our interests." He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of vampires he'd known for lifetimes. "But the world has changed. Humanity has technologies that make absolute secrecy impossible. Medical science is uncovering genetic truths we've hidden even from ourselves. We can no longer pretend to be entirely separate from the human world." "What are you suggesting?" asked a regional representative from the West Coast. "That we reveal ourselves?" "I'm suggesting we evolve," Adrian replied. "Not through dramatic public disclosure, but through careful integration where it makes sense. Medical partnerships like the one with Dr. Ward. Legal frameworks that protect our interests without relying solely on shadows and threats." He gestured toward Mara. "And I'm suggesting we recognize that the boundaries between our kind and humanity have never been as absolute as we pretended." Eleanor scoffed. "Pretty words that amount to abdication of our power." "Not abdication," Adrian corrected. "Transformation. Just as Mara's cells have transformed, our community must adapt or face extinction." He turned to face the entire assembly. "I am stepping down as your king." Gasps and exclamations filled the hall. "But not because Eleanor's coup succeeded," he continued. "Because the monarchy itself is an outdated model for our future. I propose a democratic council with representatives chosen by all communities, not just the oldest bloodlines. And what of the girl? Eleanor demanded. If what Dr. Ward says is true, she represents a breakthrough our kind has sought for centuries. Mara is not a laboratory specimen, Adrian said firmly. She is a child who deserves to grow up making her own choices. He looked down at Mara, who nodded almost imperceptibly, giving him permission for what came next. She is also my daughter. The hall fell completely silent. Not by birth, Adrian clarified, but by blood now shared, by the protection I've pledged, and by the choice we've both made. Our transfusion circuit created a bond that goes beyond genetics. I claim her as my child and heir, under the oldest laws of our kind. Vivian's sharp intake of breath was audible in the silence. Adrian, with your permission, he added quietly, meeting her eyes. As her mother, your rights remain primary, but I offer my protection, my resources, and my guidance for as long as she needs them. Tears welled in Vivian's eyes as she nodded. We've both been trying to save her. Perhaps it takes both worlds to do that. Eleanor stepped into the center of the hall. This is unprecedented. The council cannot allow. The council will vote, Samuel interrupted, as they should have from the beginning, with full information and transparent procedures. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Eleanor's faction found themselves outnumbered by those who saw the wisdom in adaptation rather than rigid adherence to traditions that no longer served their purpose. By nightfall, Adrian Hale was no longer king of the North American vampire community. Instead, he was the first elected chairperson of a newly structured council, with a 2-year term and constitutional limits on his authority. More importantly to him, he was officially recognized as Mara's vampire guardian, creating a legal status that had never existed before. A bridge between worlds that acknowledged both her human family and her place in vampire society. 6 months later, Adrian sat on the porch of the lake house, watching Mara skip stones across the water. The summer air was heavy with the scent of pine and wildflowers. Dr. Ward's latest tests showed Mara's condition continuing to stabilize, not cured in the conventional sense, but transformed into something sustainable. She would need regular treatments with synthesized components from Adrian's blood, but she would live. More than that, she would thrive. Vivian emerged from the house with a tray of lemonade. She's getting good at that, she remarked, watching Mara land a 5-skip throw. She's getting good at many things, Adrian agreed. The changes in Mara went beyond the physical. Her mind seemed sharper, her reflexes quicker. Dr. Ward was monitoring these developments carefully, documenting the emergence of what appeared to be mild vampire traits alongside her human characteristics. The school called again, Vivian said, sitting beside him. They're still interested in their specialized education proposal. Adrian nodded. Several institutions had approached them, sensing something extraordinary about Mara without knowing the full truth. What do you think? I think we need to let her be a child first, Vivian replied. The rest can wait. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Mara explore the lakeshore. The past months had brought changes for them too, a cautious rebuilding of trust, a shared purpose that transcended their complicated history. Samuel's car appeared on the gravel driveway, returning from the quarterly council meeting Adrian had chosen to skip. The lawyer looked pleased as he approached the porch. The Integration Committee's proposals passed, he reported. 3 new medical partnerships approved, and the historical documentation project is funded for 5 years. And Eleanor? Adrian asked. Cooperating, surprisingly. I think she sees the political winds shifting. Samuel accepted a glass of lemonade. The West Coast representatives were asking about Mara's progress. They can continue asking, Vivian said firmly. The agreement was clear. No testing beyond what's medically necessary for her health. Samuel nodded. Of course. I merely mentioned it because they've identified 2 other children with similar genetic markers. Not as pronounced as Mara's, but significant. Adrian wasn't surprised. Now that they knew what to look for, it made sense that other descendants of vampire-human pairings would be discovered. Have their families been approached? Not yet. The council wanted your input on protocol. Adrian watched as Mara abandoned her stone skipping to examine something in the shallow water, probably a frog or small fish. Her curiosity remained boundless. Tell them we'll develop guidelines together, he said. Based on medical ethics and family choice, not council authority. Samuel made a note on his phone. There's one more thing. The Historical Archives Committee found something you should see. He handed Adrian a folder containing photographs of ancient parchment. The text was in a dialect Adrian hadn't seen in centuries, but he could still read it. The prophecy of shared blood, he murmured, scanning the faded script. I thought this was just a legend. Apparently not, Samuel replied. It speaks of a time when the division between human and vampire would be healed through a child of both worlds. Adrian closed the folder. Mara doesn't need the burden of prophecy. She has enough to manage already. I agree, Vivian said, though it does make you wonder how many of our supposed boundaries were artificial all along. Mara came running up from the lake, her hands cupped around something. Look what I found, she called, carefully opening her fingers to reveal a tiny frog with unusual markings, deep violet patterns that almost seemed to glow against its green skin. It's beautiful, Adrian said. I've never seen one like it. It was hiding under a rock that had both sunlight and shadow on it, Mara explained, like it needed both to survive. She studied the creature with intense focus. Can I keep it? Just for a little while to study it? As long as you create the right habitat for it, Adrian replied. Everything needs its proper environment to thrive. Mara grinned, revealing the slight elongation of her canine teeth, another subtle change they were monitoring. I'll make it perfect, she promised, already planning. As she darted off to find a suitable container, Adrian felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. For centuries, he had ruled from a position of isolation, maintaining the rigid boundaries between vampire and human worlds. Now, watching Mara, neither fully one nor the other, but something beautifully, powerfully new, he understood that his true legacy would not be his reign as king. It would be this bridge between worlds, this child who carried the future in her transformed blood. The evening sun cast long shadows across the lake, but where Adrian sat, the golden light and the deepening shade intermingled, neither one dominant over the other. He closed his eyes and listened to the sound of Mara's laughter, a melody that belonged to both day and night, to life and immortality, to the ending of one era and the beginning of something far more extraordinary.